Hello, everyone. Bonsoir, mes amis. I hope you're having a very good Wednesday. If you did see the beginning, you saw that the time has changed. I know, I'm changing it from 7 to 8. However, you do get more days with me. So, I'm going to change it from 7 to 9 to 7 to 8, but we're going to do Tuesday through Thursday instead of just Wednesdays and Thursdays. So, I'm excited for the change, see how things, well, change. But you guys, of course, we have a lot to get into. And I'm kind of curious. What have you been up to? What's new? I'm not sure if there is much new from yesterday because we've already been chatting and talking about everything. But while I am here and talking with you, I'm making a couple changes in the background right now. Um, there are some PowerPoints. Let me show you actually what I'm working with so you can see what we're looking at. So for the PowerPoint, sometimes I take chances, I take risks, and I don't really know what they're going to end up looking like until I kind of put them up on the screen. And I had chosen red today. Taking a risk, I know. I chose red, and the thing is, it's just, I wasn't liking it. So I had to change it, you know? It just, it was too much. It was almost as if it was just like overtaking the whole show. I was like, I can't have my PowerPoint be a problem. I have to change this. So I went from red to green. I think I like this green. And I like the different colors, but the variations, it's it's so crazy how the colors show up so differently on each PowerPoint. You would think that there would kind of be like a cohesiveness to it. It's like the ones that you think are going to look good sometimes don't. And then the ones that you think suck are the ones that end up looking good. It is crazy. Hmm. What is going on over here? But today we're going to continue with more machines. More machines. And Henry Ford, we had a hit on him earlier. And if you've been here for a minute, my OG people, you know that Ford is a pioneer in the assembly line and also mass production in how he did it, how grand of a scale he did it, all that jazz. But I'm uncertain if a lot of you are aware of the diesel engine. I know my guys are like, yeah, for sure. But for me, it was interesting to learn about the diesel. I learned like some cool things about how it works, why it is so durable, and why it lasts so much longer than a typical engine or like the auto type engine, to tell you, an example. But I was curious then, like, oftentimes when we hear about diesel engines, I only think of trucks because being a girl that I am, I didn't really venture out into the cars world, so I'm not really familiar with all of it. But it was really fascinating to find this out because there are, in fact, a couple cars who use the diesel engine. And an Audi looks like to be, one of those cars that uses that type of engine. And I think the Audi is known for being a pretty durable car, or it's known for being, it handles well on the road and things like that. But I wasn't sure if the diesel was in fact used in any other type of car other than a truck. So that was interesting to find out. But I think that one looks much better. I like the writing better. But I'm thinking we're gonna start with another video today. We're going to start with another video today, and today we're going to start with the Titanic. I know, Titanic is so different than what you would have imagined I would be mentioning here, but we're going to do the video. We're going to have a little bit of fun, get loose, get chatting before we really do everything. And then once we do that, then we're going to be able to go on and talk about the inventions, and you'll find out why I ended up playing the Titanic for you. So we saw what I'm working on real quick, more machines, more differences, but I had to show you right there. This is kind of like a basic diesel engine kind of thing. It's first inception. And then, of course, this is the basic radio first inception, like first prototype, the very beginning of it. And of course, we've come across Ford before. Just a picture of the assembly line and how big it is. Just crazy how much goes on with the Ford factory and everything that we learned. You guys, I'm always losing my mind. You know, this is a good place to come to lose your mind along with me, okay? I feel like sometimes there's so many things to think about. But yeah, this has been an interesting topic. This has been an interesting topic, and I'm getting into so many different things, so many different varieties, different areas that I would have never thought. The Titanic one is especially intriguing because I didn't think that the Titanic would be impacted by any kind of technology. Like, we know, of course, of the movie, and it has its own thing, but the Titanic, how it would be impacted by modern technology, it is truly intriguing. The only thing I remember hearing about it is just it hit an iceberg, and it could have been prevented. It could have been prevented, and it just hit an iceberg, and then everything else just kind of went under. Everything else just decided to just crumble, and a lot of people died. 1,517 people, if I'm remembering that stat correctly. And it was not necessary. But we're first going to start in just a fun scene, just to look at something fun. The flying scene, I don't know. I'm not a romantic, so it doesn't really do much for me. But we're just going to start it just to kind of get going and to have like a bit of breaker in the ice. Just start something fun and get the ball rolling. But here's the Titanic. That's a lot of fun. I thought it's good to get you smiling. Start on a positive note. So, we're going to do that one. And we're going to do one more. Yeah, no. I'm okay with the kissing part. Okay, no PDA over here. We don't put up with that. But the main thing was I wanted you to remember this gigantic machine and remember the idea behind it and the thought behind it and what these people were, going through, and kind of, I know this is not even, it's a movie. We talk about the good parts, but I wanted you to see and to get a feel for what I'm going with when we begin talking about the technology that would impact and actually help the Titanic go down. I know. We never thought that technology would be something that could cause the demise or cause negative things to happen to people. Not in terms of the war technology, but technology that's meant to help people, in fact, sometimes ends up doing the very opposite. And we are going to get into that with the reading, and we'll be able to show you, and you can see how that would end up happening. So, let me pull up my reading today. And today, again, we're at an hour, so it's a little different than what we're used to. Little different. So I gotta move. The pace is we're gonna be quicker. We're gonna fit more information today. So let's do reading mode. Perfecto. And then we're gonna change this. Cool. And that could be counted upon early warnings about the ever-present hazard to shipping in the springtime North Atlantic. Then those ones we know are icebergs. Acting on information received, the Titanic's captain changed for a more southerly course. Unfortunately, he was steaming directly toward yet more icebergs. During April 14th, the Titanic's radio operators received several iceberg warnings, but because they were Marconi employees and the company was paid to provide a lucrative wireless telegraph service for the first-class passengers, they did not relay the warnings to the bridge. At around 11:40, Titanic struck an iceberg, fatally damaging her hull. While the use of radios failed to avoid the disaster, it could have ensured the timely rescue of the passengers and crew. Although a number of ships received the Titanic's CQD and the new SOS distress calls, none of those responding were close enough to reach her before she sank. The SS California was the closest, but had stopped for the night because of the ice. She saw the Titanic's distress flares, but her radio operator was asleep and her transmitter turned off, so she failed to get the distress call or respond. One story goes that the Titanic's radio operator had upset the California's operator by refusing to take an earlier iceberg warning because he was too busy with passenger traffic. Tragically, instead of saving the Titanic, the radios on board contributed to her sinking with the loss of 1,517 lives. Yeah. I'm surprised I got that stats correct. Hey, my fellow nerdy people out there, if you check in the beginning when I first start, 1,517, I just would like some credit, please, for remembering that. But on a more serious note, they had all the technology available. They had the ability to, even if the ship went down, they could have signaled and gotten the people off the boats and used the radio to get help. The question is, why didn't they? That is the question. And the easy answer would be money, isn't it? In the story, in the reading, we just kind of heard about that, like, yeah, they had this radio, but it was Marconi, like, radios. And there was a telegraph company that paid a lot of money to be able to be the ones who are providing the information, per se, to the rich people. And because of that, a buyer paid more than a new technology, then it wasn't used. Like, and you can think of regular life, how that happens, that our technologies these days of what we have for automation, I thought that we would be further along, much further along with automation nowadays, with the things that they can do with building things in factories. I honestly thought McDonald's would have, like, robots for deep fryers by now. But they don't. And the question is, why don't they? And I think if we look a little bit deeply, we look a little bit into it, we'll find that money is a contributor to, like, preventing technology from really immersing as quickly as it could if we were in a perfect world. And that's what really struck me for this one with the Titanic and how the radio could have saved all these people. But the telegraph companies paid more money, so instead they went along with, the information, or they ignored it because that's what the boss wants. That's what the boss of the boss wants. We just do what we're told as employees. We don't really check much into these things. It's not our job. And I don't, and I get it. Like, the guy probably genuinely did have a lot of people to work with. And it's kind of funny, though, that in there they're like, well, the operator of the SS refused to send any more calls to the operator on the Titanic because they had gotten into a tizzy and he refused to take his calls. And that just makes me laugh because you can think of the humanness in all of this. That you got upset about something, and the reason why you got upset was because, just a communication thing. One side thought it was more important to keep the other apprised of what's happening, but the other side was just like, I am too busy with these very rich passengers. I have a lot to do, and we get it. But then the feud ends up being, well, if he or she doesn't want all the information I'm sending over, I'm going to turn off the radio, and I'm not going to deal with them anymore. And we can think of doing that in our everyday lives. Although for us, we didn't contribute to our own death, potentially, or the death of many people around us on the Titanic. But the radio, the Marconi radio, is very important because although he wasn't the first person to, like, invent the radio, he's the person who, like, helped push it out there and, like, mass produce it. and really sell it. Many times with these inventions, it's awesome to have them. Just like when we talked about Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. Yes, you have the brilliance of Steve Wozniak. However, you needed a man like Jobs to help sell it. You need a salesman. You need a marketer. You need people who are able to get the technology out to the public. And Marconi, the reason why he's so important is because he's the man who kind of helped push the radio out to the public. And, you know, a lot of different people are valuable when it comes to inventions, when it comes to building these things. And I know that sometimes marketers can be a bit of a pain. I know they're a bit of a pain, but they are valuable. They are needed. I never thought I'd be saying that. But sometimes a product also speaks for itself. I think the Japanese are known for not marketing things. They're known for not, putting their name out there in TV shows and trying to tell us how good the product is. You remember the last time you bought a Japanese product and you saw a commercial for it? Think hard. Think really, really, really hard. Or Korean products. Like, other than facial stuff, they don't really do that. They really don't, because their products speak for themselves. They really do. And I think that one of the great things about the current age that we are in is that we can just put it out there very subtly and these changes will be made. Yeah, we talked about money and how it impacts technology. Yes. Just as we have great technology that's coming out, there are people who are spending a decent amount of money preventing the technology from coming out because it doesn't serve them, because it makes their lives more hard, because the turnover and trying to implement the new technology is that costly. It really can be. I could see the reason why we still have regular people working in certain jobs, not because the technology is not there, but because the transition is going to be so difficult. So I think it has to get to a point where it's so bad, like Cullen said yesterday, that, necessity is the mother of all invention, that until it's necessary, that change will not be made. The automation will not be made with the technology that we currently have, because that field could be so much bigger. It could be so much more. It could be utilized so much more than it is right now. And I am surprised that it's not being utilized. But I just went through why I think that, very logical reasons why it would be suppressed. But the thing I'm finding out is now AI is taking over the job of like streamers. Really? Really? Okay. Or like putting out the information. And the thing I think like was really funny to me is like we've always thought that AI was going to be used to do the backbreaking work, the heavy machinery and the drilling and all that. Yes, it's come a long way, but we imagine that those jobs would be automated before AI would be making, creative art and making puns or funny things on Twitter. It's backwards. It is completely backwards from what we expected. And that's scary to me. I'm optimistic, but it's a tad bit scary. We have some more different, like 4 different versions of the radio over here. And that's interesting. Very fascinating to me because, like, that's so different. Like, the box, everything's made out of wood, which is so different than the whole, like, dial tuning thing over here. If you've never had to deal with that, like, the little tuning and trying to find the right spot, like, I remember, like, using radios that were that old where you can still, like, pull the things. But then again, I like to try things that are, a little different and out of the ordinary. So many of you may not ever have come across any radio where you've had to like move a little dial thing or move anything across. But it's kind of funny. It really is kind of funny. But a picture of the Titanic over here. I wanted to show that to you just so you see how that works out. But it's funny. It is super duper funny to me. I to just it takes so little. It takes so little sometimes how things are impacted. And the voyage for the Titanic, Southampton to New York. So a decent amount of our names that we do have, they are, yeah, that makes sense because we have Hampton in New York. And honestly, I always thought the background for the Titanic, I honestly always thought that it was like, starting off in America or starting off in New York. But we're going to do the diesel engine next. The diesel engine in Rudolf Diesel. This one intrigued me, really intrigued me, not only because I know nothing about machines, but because the story behind it is intriguing. So, let me get into the reading mode so we can hit this one and hit the ground running. Because I'm not used to having so little time, but we gotta move along. But I brought water today, you guys. You should be proud of me, okay? I brought water. Righty. Oh. See? I'm dropping things. I'm always a bit of a ditz, okay? Just a tad. The steam engine drove the first industrial revolution, but it was extremely inefficient. Thus, it was a wasteful process and utilized a great deal of resources, making the process of running a mill, for example, very expensive. It also produced huge amounts of atmospheric pollution. So sorry, guys. Let's start that one more time. It also produced huge amounts of atmospheric pollution. Rudolf Diesel dreamed of creating an engine that would be truly efficient. His diesel engine, designed in 1892 and 93, was successfully built in 1897. It was one of the key inventions that contributed to the success of the second industrial revolution. The first industrial revolution was powered by water power and then by steam. However, the stationary steam engine that drove the mills, mines, and factories, perfected by James Watt and improved by George Corliss, was grossly inefficient, with a thermal efficiency of between 10 and 15%. This entailed a huge waste of resources and money, and also created atmospheric pollution on an epic scale. Although the environment was not the burning issue, pun intended, it is today. Engineers strove to create an engine that would approach the efficiency of the ideal engine proposed by Nicolas Carnot in 1824. Carnot studied the engines of his day, including both steam and internal combustion engines, and he described an ideal heat engine that would work on the four-step cycle. Heat is transferred from a high-temperature source to expand a working substance, gas or liquid, and work the position. As a piston and cylinder are perfectly insulated, they cannot gain or lose heat. The working substance expands until the expansion causes it to cool. The cooling working substances transfers the heat to the lower temperature sink, and compression of the working substance in the insulated engine causes its temperature to rise, returning it to the same state as in step 1. The author's thoughts on this. When I began constructing my engine in the early 90s, the existing method was a total failure. The enormous pressures generated by the machine, the friction between the moving parts, the magnitude of which had never been seen before, forced me to minutely examine the stress on each single organ and to delve extensively into material science. Meant to say the inventor's thoughts on this. So this is the words of Rudolf Diesel. The first commercial four-stroke IC engine was the Italian Barsanti Matteucci engine, patented in the UK in 1857, but IC only came into its own with the improvements made by the German engineers Nicholas Alto and Eugene Langen in 1877. Four-stroke IC engines that use electrical ignition from spark plugs are still known as Otto engines. Although much more efficient than steam engines, the Otto engine did not even begin to approach the thermal efficiency of the Carnot heat engine. A modern four-stroke engine only averages a thermal efficiency of around 30%. On the evening of September 29, 1913, the German engineer and inventor of the diesel engine Rudolf Diesel boarded a ferry from Antwerp bound for England. Although the First World War would break out in less than a year, there was nothing secret about Diesel's trip to the country that would soon be at war with his homeland. He was traveling to London for a routine meeting with the British manufacturers of his engines. He retired to his cabin at 10 p.m., asking the steward to wake him up at 6:15 a.m. The next morning, his cabin was found to be empty, and a subsequent search found no trace of him aboard. 10 days later, a body was found floating in the channel by a Dutch fishing boat. The body was in such poor state that the crew did not bring it aboard. Instead, they retrieved personal items from the body that might help in its identification. In October, Rudolph's family confirmed that the items belonged to the missing man. Diesel's main biographer believed that depressed and exhausted from overwork, Diesel had suffered a mental breakdown and taken his own life. But at the same time, conspiracy theories abound in the British press. With war about to break out, it was suggested that German military intelligence had had a hand in his death. In order to prevent him from passing on any more of his inventions to the British, another more recent theory was that he was murdered on the orders of the oil industry, as he planned engines that would run on biodiesel, thus ending the lucrative monopoly of the petroleum companies on the production of fuel for IC engines. Despite the passage of almost a century, no evidence of a plot has ever been uncovered. Hence, it is unlikely that the inventor's death was a mystery worth of an Agatha Christie novel. Diesel dreamed of creating an engine as efficient as Carnot's ideal engine. And although in theory Diesel's design could reach 75% efficiency, in practice they currently peak at 50% and average around 45%. This is still about 15% better than the efficiency of most auto engines. The thermal efficiency of a diesel engine means, of course, that it uses less fuel for the same amount of work. Diesel oil itself is cheaper to produce from petroleum than gasoline, and can more easily be substituted with biofuels without any costly conversion of the engine. Although not a green fuel, diesel produces very little carbon monoxide, which makes it ideal for use in mines and submarines. Because the diesel engine does not use a high-voltage ignition system, it has a much higher, simpler overall design than a gasoline engine, which also makes it more reliable. The high pressures needed in a diesel engine mean that they have to be of much sturdier construction than gasoline engines, giving them a much longer working life. These advantages made diesel an obvious choice to replace steam and drive the heavy industrial transportation plant of the Second Industrial Revolution. I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist, so I'm gonna go ahead and disagree with the author and be like, they set out to kill him. 100%. They had their own agenda, and they set out to legit kill this dude. Just because they don't have the evidence? I mean, really? Because no evidence has been uncovered? Back then it was easy to kill people, make them go away, and never be heard from again. So easy to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and be like, I'm gonna put on my conspiracy here, like theory hat, and we're gonna go through this. First off, the body was in such poor state that they couldn't even bring it aboard. That speaks to me that, more happened. There was more that happened in the background than was actually, talked about. Like, if a person were to go the unfortunate way by their own hands, let's put it, PG terms for YouTube especially, they tend to just, one and done, right? One and done, simple, quick, because you can't do much. But if the body is such a poor state, it kind of makes me think that there were wounds on the body, or there were certain, inflictions that were imposed upon this man. Because I'm thinking, if it's a couple weeks, and if it is like Europe, if it is that area, and if it is like kind of like a springish winter time frame, the body you think would still be well preserved in an icy cold water, especially in that region. So I don't understand how this would not be possible that he would just get, well, taken off the earth. Like, why not? I mean, it just says that Germany would now be at war with England very shortly, and we know how that one goes. And also, the monopolies, the oil monopolies, and the fact that this engine could run on different fuel than what was being, sold in the market at the time. That's another thing we don't think about, that like these inventors, sometimes they pay with their life for their inventions. And we forget that. And I would have never thought that, honestly. But you guys, that's crazy. But it makes sense. And I'm kind of curious. It makes me curious if the diesel engine is so much better and it is more efficient and it lasts longer, why do we still use the auto type engine more, regularly? And why is the diesel engine primarily associated with a truck, with the big machinery? Like, think 18-wheeler kind of thing. Why is that? It makes me ponder. I don't know if I set up my chat box correctly, but we're gonna, as we go along, we're gonna make sure everything is working out properly. But yeah, it's very interesting to me. But I didn't know how much more efficient the diesel engine was compared to the hybrid engine that we have today, or the auto type of engine. And there are numerous different types of engines out there. Each have a certain different iterations. There's a 4-cylinder or a 2-cylinder. Again, we are scratching the surface over here. But for all my experts, forgive me. We're going with the flow over here. But, I wanted to show you some depictions, some pictures of this engine, the early look of this. It looks awesome. So fascinating. And I can't tell you, I haven't got the faintest idea how any of that work. But I wanted to show you the types of cars that run on the diesel engine. Obviously, we have a lot of trucks, as you would expect. But like I mentioned, I was talking about in the very beginning, the Audi over here. I hope that's an Audi. I think it's an Audi. If you do know it's an Audi, put it down below. I don't know. Again, cars are not my world, okay? Cars are not my world. I venture in, but I'm not really a lot known for this. But we also have an SUV over here. It kind of reminds me of a GMC, General Motor Corporation. Wow, I just thought of that. That just because I've been reading so many things about General Motors and how they came about. Again, I never thought, what does GMC stand for? This knowledge just came to me now. It just popped up in my brain. What does GMC stand for? But let's see. There are some things I want to show you in here in terms of the diesel engine and a little bit of how it works. So, we don't really need the audio for this. I don't think it talks, but we're just going to see what it looks like. We're going to see what the process like up close. Wow. Fuel, air filter, and the inside of what's going on. Okay. Valves. Crankshaft. Ignite, down, up, power strokes. Intake. Okay, so we're going to look at this one more closely. Let's see. Because this is exactly what we were talking about, the steps in how the diesel one works versus how the auto type works. The auto, the air and the fuel are mixed before they go into the engine. With the diesel, it doesn't mix before. It's like it all happens like right at once. Again, very broad overview, very broad overstrokes over here, but we're going to look at this one more time and see exactly the process of how it intakes and ignites, and the fuel is then, put into the motor. So up. Oh, my goodness. Huh. That's weird. I didn't expect that to happen. Let's try that again. Let's see what happens. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, guys. This one is a different video that just automatically began. Okay. So this is a new one. And this one shows exactly how the compression ignition engine works and the cycle of the diesel engine. So, different video. And let's go through that again. So air, we go up, ignites with the fuel, and then it gets pumped up. So it goes back down. And it just repeats all over again. Huh. Watching that, I still miss some of it. It's so interesting, so intricate. I would go through it a third time because I am seriously that curious. But, I know, like, without seeing a different type of engine, you don't really, you're like, this means, very little. But I just really wanted to show you how that process is a little bit and how fascinating it is, and also how complex it is. Like, these guys are smart. These guys are wicked smart. I wouldn't even know what to touch. Like, I would be afraid to touch anything because I would break it all. That's how, like, ignorant I am of the mechanic world. I don't know a clue. I don't have a clue about that world. But it's super cool, though, to see that work. Super cool to see it in action. Okay, and then this depiction over here, we are looking, so there's the intake process, and then we have compression, power, and then exhaust. And I'm sorry, it's not the best picture. We're gonna have to work on that, on improving that ability. We'll see what we can do in the future. But, it looks like the intake, it looks like air over here. And then this part is open, or like it's moving this way. So it goes in, down, this part is open, and then it comes back up. So compression, this part goes up. And again, I think it's this air up here. And of course, then you have fuel injector. This fuel coming from here. And then the air and the fuel is igniting, making the gas or the, energy. And then the exhaust here, the byproduct, is being pumped out of this end. It's going out. So everything happens in this chamber over here. Like air comes in through here, exhaust goes out through here, it looks like. And then we are just doing the magic. This is turning back and forth, turns this way, turns that way. So it's like a little semi-arch over here going on. But that's my little understanding, okay? It's my little understanding of it all, and that is the only magic I can work out for you. But finally, we're gonna hit on Henry Ford, you guys. Henry Ford today. There's so much happening. So much happening. We had covered him a little bit, of course, for my OG people, you know that. But for my new people, welcome. Here, I have to do my quick shameless plug. 1K subscriber, that is the goal, and we do need your help to make that happen. We, of course, would like to improve and get better and form a community and have a lot of fun together. And I look forward to the day when that is the case. At the same time, currently I'm having a lot of fun enjoying the process and taking it slow. You really believe you really believe I'm taking it slow and I'm enjoying taking it slow? No. No, I'm not. I'm impatient, okay? I'm a very impatient person. I tell myself these things so I can remind myself to be patient, but I am bad at it. I am so bad at it. I'm like, we need to be roaring. We need to get going and do better right now. And then the next day I'm like, I need to be patient. I need to understand. It takes time. My guys, like, that's my brain. That is my brain. But we're going to get on forward and read through this and then see what happens. So, with a diesel engine, it is an internal combustion engine that uses compression igniting instead of electrical ignition. Diesel's initial design was a vertical single piston engine that drove a large flywheel. The engine cycle can be described in 4 following strokes. 1. Intake stroke draws in air at atmospheric pressure into the cylinder through the intake valve. 2. With both valves closed, the compression stroke compresses the air to a pressure of 40 bar, 4.0 MPa or 580 psi, and heats the heat air to 1,222 degrees Fahrenheit or 550 degrees Celsius. 3. At the top of the compression stroke, fuel is injected as a fine spray into the combustion chamber. The vapor is ignited by the heated compressed air in the chamber, causing the fuel droplets to burn at a constant pressure. The rapid expansion of combustion gases drives the piston downward, powering the camshaft. In addition to following combustion to occur without a separate ignition system, the high compression ratio increases the engine's overall efficiency. A major problem in auto engines where air and fuel are mixed before entering the cylinder is the danger of premature ignition, which can wreck an engine. This is not a problem in a diesel engine, in which fuel does not enter the cylinder until shortly before top dead center. And finally, 4. During the exhaust phase, the waste burnt products are expelled via exhaust. So we did have that right. We intake air, we mix fuel and air, and then we ignite, that burns, and then it goes out of the exhaust valve. So if you're ever wondering why diesel is so much more durable and why your husband's truck never breaks down and your minivan keeps going, out of line, being messed up every, 5 years, now you know. Now you know. They're more expensive, of course, but it seems like it is worth the price. Ford and the assembly line. Although not the first to manufacture automobiles in the U.S. or to use mass production, Henry Ford created the world's first mass-market automobile. His success not only established Ford Motor Company as one of the industry leaders, but it transformed society in ways that Ford himself could never have anticipated. Although cars have given us economic development and freedom of movement, they have also brought pollution and gridlock. The horseless carriage boom. In the closing decades of the 19th century, the biggest environmental headaches for city planners in North America and Western Europe was not poor sanitation, slum overcrowding, or pollution, but the horse. By 1880, there were so many horse-drawn vehicles in the world's major metropolises that the city fathers of New York, Paris, and London were warned that by 1930 their streets would disappear under 9 feet or 3 meters of horse manure. In 1886, as if answering their prayers, Carl Benz produced the Benz patent motor wagon, automobile equipped with a gasoline-powered internal combustion engine. With its high carriage seat and outsized rear wheels, the motor wagon looked a lot like a buggy horse whose horse had gone astray mid-ride. But with this rather ungainly, clunky beginning, the automobile age had begun. The first decades of the auto industry are akin to the dot-com boom of the late 1990s. Hundreds of young idealistic inventors and engineers could see the tremendous potential of the automobile, but their dreams were outpacing the materials, science, and technology of the day. They were also guilty of overestimating the size of a market. The infrastructure was not yet available to realize such dreams. When gas first came about, it was originally sold as a cleaning product by drugstores. The first cars that were offered on the market were handmade in tiny quantities and sold to wealthy enthusiasts and hobbyists. Benz, the leading automaker of the period, only sold 25 motor wagons between 1886 and 1893. Undeterred, hundreds of engineers and inventors went into business, experimenting with a wide range of engine technologies, including steam, electricity, early hybrids, and internal combustion, using an equally wider range of fuels. However, like any investment bubble growing from any new technology, after the initial excitement, many firms went bust, shattering the dreams of young entrepreneurs and losing investors their money. In 1903, the attorney Horace Rackham went to his bank for advice about a potential investment. The investment in question was 50 ordinary shares at $100 a share in a new automobile company being set up by his friend and client, Henry Ford. The unnamed bank manager replied dismissively, "The horse is here to stay, but the automobile is only a novelty, a fad." Rackham, to his credit and considerable profit, ignored the advice and raised a $5,000 stake to taking out a loan and selling real estate holdings. In investing in the Ford Motor Company, he was taking a significant risk near Detroit, Michigan. Henry's parents hoped he would take over the family farm, but he had other interests and ambitions. At age 16, Ford went to Detroit to become an apprentice machinist. He got a job as an engineer in the Edison Illuminating Company. Ford was promoted to chief engineer in 1893, but in his spare time he experimented with the new internal combustion engines that were coming out of Europe. In 1869 he built his first vehicle, the Ford quadricycle, more a motorized cycle than a true automobile. In 1899 Ford left Edison and set up the Detroit Automobile Company, determined to crack the burgeoning auto market. It faltered. So the Henry Ford Company came about in 1901 and later renamed Ford Motor Company in 1903. It was then that Ford realized that rather than building high-performance racers and roadsters for the few, he should manufacture a car for the great multitude. With a couple of business failures behind him, Ford risked everything, his reputation, all of his money, as well as his investors, to create the Ford Model A. Ford's gamble paid off, and he sold over 1,700 Model A's, securing the future of the firm. His subsequent rise was nothing short of meteoric. In 1904, he founded Ford Canada. In 1906, Ford became the top-selling auto brand in the U.S., with close to 9,000 cars sold. In 1909, he founded Ford of Britain, opening the company's first overseas factory in Manchester, England. In 1911 and 1913, Ford established itself in South America and Argentina. Between 1903 and 1908, Ford and Wills designed 9 models each year, given a letter, though not all passed the prototype stage. In 1908, Ford introduced the Model T, which remained in production until 1927, with 15 million cars sold worldwide. Although Ford did not invent mass production, or the auto assembly line. Oldsmobile had gotten there before him. He introduced it on a much larger scale and applied it more rigorously in his factory at Highland Park. By 1914, the production time for the Model T had dropped from 12.5 hours to just 93 minutes. The Ford Model T looks like a basic automobile, with the usual arrangements of front-mounted engine, chassis, pedals, steering wheel, and four wheels, but looks can be deceptive. Because the Model T does not have a battery, the driver started the engine by hand, cranking a magneto with a handle at the front of the radiator. Because the engine could kick back, the driver had to cup the handle in the palm of his hand rather than grasp it to avoid a broken thumb. The choke was operated from a wire at the base of the radiators so that it could be used during cranking. Once started, the four-cylinder inline engine had a top speed of 40 to 50 miles per hour, with a fuel consumption of 13 to 21 miles per gallon. But the greatest difference from a modern car was driving. The driver used 3 pedals, high and low gears, reverse gear, and engine brake, and 2 levers, handbrake, and throttle. The Ford automobile. Ford. Argentina? And South America? Canada? Britain? That's a decent amount. I didn't think that Ford had gone so far, like so quickly. I really didn't think so. But again, wanted to show you a quick picture. Oh, remember yesterday how I was talking about white rubber tires? There you go. White rubber tires. See? Everything's come back. All my weird technology comes back. But all of the weird things I have in my brain, it all comes back. But 15 million Ford, cars were sold by 1927. And it primarily the Model T, known as Lizzie, I would like to say. But Ford did it on a big scale. Ford did it like no one else, honestly. And we know. We've covered him a little bit, so we know what we went through. With Ford, there's a lot happening with him. And of course, for my OG people who've been here, you're like, Shalinda, you went much more detail last time. I know, but this time it's just I can't, redo him too much, but he's very important. He played such an important role. We had to just throw him in the hat. We had to throw the hat in the ring. These different sayings. I don't know them all. But I'm trying to find a video of the automation of the Ford company today. Because I want you to see what these men were doing on an assembly line back then and what they are doing today. Say, I'm just glad I don't have to work with these machines today. Seems super dangerous. Yeah, it does seem super dangerous. There's a lot going on with these machines and what these people had to deal with. Yeah. But look at this video of kind of what they were doing back then, putting that car together. Wow. And each man has a job. Each man does his thing, gets in and gets out. Remember, we're going from 12.5 hours to 93 minutes. That's just amazing. It really is amazing. Look at that. So, that was back then. And I'm going to show you what is today. Because I think you'll find it fascinating. And Cullen, I'm sorry if you had sent a couple messages and I didn't see them. We got to work on making sure that that's opaque for the background. But yes, I really got to work on that. So many things to work on in the background. But yeah, I'm sorry if you sent some things and I didn't read it aloud. Thank you for sending me messages. They're always fun to get into and see a different perspective. So I appreciate you. So today, this is today what men have and the tools and the automation. And this is what I was telling you about. That like I was thinking technology would be further along in being able to help men do such things. Like you see, like we don't have to have men lift this stuff anymore. We have these huge arms. This is the Ford Motor Company today. And I'm impressed how long they've lasted and that they've made it through all these crazy things. Think about the unions. Think about, well, other, competition. They're doing a wonderful job in innovating and, maintaining and not letting the legacy die. That's super cool. We have a lady working. That's nice. But, different components. It's done so differently. And next week, you guys, we're going to get into the drilling machine, the hand drill. You just saw they're using a drill over there. And we're going to talk about how that one also played an important role in, shaping our society as we know it today. But look at that. Wow. That's so cool. And again, everything now is being run in such a way. And he has this machine to help him put it through and or pick it up and move it along and just fix it properly. It just fits in there. And these men don't have to be lifting everything. They can just be there, men and women. I see some women in there. They don't have to be lifting and doing all the heavy work all the time, although their job is still very difficult. I know how hard these people work and how difficult that kind of job can be. The toll that it takes on your body, it's crazy. So again, always have to give such men credit because it is on their backs that our society is built on today. Imagine if you didn't have your car. Imagine if you didn't have your car. But look at that go on top, you guys. That's so cool. No way. Okay, I didn't think I was going to have this much fun just watching these machines be made. Insane. Wow. Mind blown. Mind blown. Okay. Now we are doing wheels. We're putting in axles. We're drilling things. How are they doing that? Okay, now we're doing the wheels. Okay, and then okay. So it's still very much, everyone is specialized. Everyone has their own role. Yet, because we have automation, they're able to do much more quickly. So that he doesn't even need to go around. It moves around. Oh, that's so cool. Nice. Okay. Now that is fun to watch. Gentlemen, I get you. I get you now why you're so into these machines. Oh my goodness. This is so much fun. Like, I would want a truck too, okay? This just looks so fun. Like the process and seeing it all come together and all the big pieces lifting up like that's just I would want if I wanted a Ford car. No wait. That wasn't a Ford car. Was that a Ford? Is that a Ford or is that like Toyota? I don't know. I don't know all these things. But I think this is Ford. But either way, you get the idea. Assembly line, machines, new ways that we're doing it, and how far they've come in the industry. We're going to stop it there. They're just doing finishing touches and all that jazz, and they're rolling them out. It is Ford. I just wanted to be proven right before we switched on, but it is Ford. And they're driving off. The driving off process is so different from what they were doing in the early days, isn't it? And also the different types of cars that are coming out, the variations, much more, many more variations in the Lizzie when it first began. But Ford is doing well. Ford has done well over the years and has, gone with the times and changed and been able to survive. So kudos to Ford. I have to give that company credit. And keeping everything together, because it's very hard to go from one era to the next and then still have everything together. You guys, I know. It's time for our time to come to an end. In the future, maybe we'll make this an hour and 15 minutes just so we can banter, have fun, put something in the chat, and we'll end up talking about it and things like that. But these were the machines that we hit on today. And as usual, it's been fun. I will see you next Tuesday. So that's going to be fun. You're going to see me more days, but for only 1 hour. Au revoir. À demain. À semaine prochaine.